Hello, we'll talk now about an important Italian architect who actually works and lives in Barcelona, in Catalonia. And let's um, contemplate her work. This is the website where you'll see works done by Benedetta Tagliabue, but the name of the firm is Miralles Tagliabue because her husband, Eric Miralles, died, I don't know, almost 20 years ago, at the age, I think, of 45, a remarkable, truly one of the best European and world architects when he was alive. But he died at 45, and his second wife, Benedetta Tagliabue, continued the works that she started together with Eric Miralles and continues to this day a very rich, creative, and acknowledged professional practice. This is Benedetta Tagliabue, born in Italy, I think in Milan, and she was educated in Milan. But then she went to work in Barcelona for Carme Pinos and Eric Miralles, and well, it happened. They fell in love, Eric Miralles with her, and so they got married, and then he died at 45 of brain tumor. But she's a very interesting architect who loves books, just as Eric Miralles loved books a lot, actually. And there are plenty of books in her office. And her idea, and probably also the idea of Eric Miralles, was that a good architecture practice, a good architectural office, is also an office where learning takes place. So it's not just about producing works, but it's also an educational center. It's where you learn new ideas, new things. You open a book. It's about culture. Architecture is a cultural phenomenon. Here she is on the bicycle, probably in Barcelona, and well, images from her office, which has some fantastic things in a way on the walls. What is on the walls matches what is on her, and it's an unusual office because you know it's also where they live, where she lives, and I think with her son. I think now he's also part of the office. Let's start. Let's start looking at some of the buildings that Benedetta Tagliabue built. She won the competition for the Spanish pavilion at the World Expo in Shanghai. I forgot, in maybe 2008 or something. But I wrote there Kita, which is the Romanian word for the material she used for the Spanish pavilion. Look at this. China, Shanghai, Benedetta Tagliabue. I admire very much this work. Yes, it's true. Behind this woven, building is a steel structure. This might be a little bit problematic, but I think Benedetta Tagliabue wanted to weave her building. And if we look at the word architect from 1550s, from the Middle French word architect, which came from Latin architectus, from Greek architekton, master builder or director of works, from archi, which means archi or arch means chief. But then we have tecton, the other half of the word. So architecton. Tecton comes from texture, and texture in the early 15th century meant network or structure, from Middle French texture, or directly from Latin textura, web, texture, structure. From texere, which means to weave, from the Proto-Indo-European root tex, T-E-K-S, which means to weave, to fabricate, to make wicker, rakita, or wattle framework. So the work, actually, and I have a kind of a diagram, and I could send it to you, where it shows that all the words defining architecture, or words deriving from the word architecture, everything related linguistically to the word architecture, comes from text, T-E-K-S, which means to weave. So weaving is immensely important for architecture. And that's what we see here, some form of a weaving. By the way of this, I want to say something else. Gottfried Semper in the 19th century had a great intuition that actually, I don't think he knew about the text and the etymology of the word architecture or architect, but he thought that the first building ever built was done in this way. This was Gottfried Semper. I will explain in a few words a little bit later. A very important German architect and theoretician, who asked himself, how did the first building ever built came into being? And he gave an answer that was significant. In fact, it was almost completely opposite to the one given by Abel Augier, a Frenchman, who said that the first building was when the primitive man built some columns and the beams and then the roof. But Gottfried Semper had a completely different idea. And here they are. He saw that the first building had 4 elements of architecture: the hearth, where the fire was, the roof, the enclosure, and the mount. His idea was like this, that the first people who ever built a house, they were people without a house. They gathered around the fire. They had fire. They were coming from work, either fishermen or hunters. So they gathered around the fire and they understood the importance of fire. They understood it has to be protected. It is vital to protect fire in order to, to protect themselves, to live. But how to do it? Because they didn't have tools to cut down trees and build columns and beams. So they took vegetal materials from the bushes and the trees, and they started to weave them. And they created some panels, kind of similar to what Benedetta Tagliabue used for the Spanish pavilion in Shanghai. And that's how they created the enclosure. Then they understood that they have to elevate the fire a little bit from the earth, and they created the mount, the platform on which, or socul in Romanian, on which the house was built. And the hearth is, where the fire was, the hearth, vatra in Romanian. And at the end, they created the roof when they developed a little bit and they were able to do carpentry. So hearth, metallurgy, and ceramics, because it's the fireplace. The roof, carpentry, enclosure, textile, and weaving, mount, earthwork. These are the 4 elements that Gottfried Semper thought created the first house ever built. And here they are again. The origins of each element can be found in the traditional crafts of ancient society: hearth, fire, ceramics; roof, carpentry; enclosure, weaving. And it was his idea that it was actually the first thing to do to protect fire from the animals. And they created these panels with woven vegetal materials or material. The Caribbean hut, in 1851, the great exhibition, and you see here the hearth. We see the woven panels built with vegetal materials that was taken from bushes and trees. We see the mount, and we see the roof, the 4 elements of the primeval hut. But this was the conception of Abel Augier, a Frenchman, that the first house came into being by, using the trunks of the trees columns and then create the beams and then the roof and so on. In my opinion, this is the masculinist conception of the first house, while Gottfried Semper's is the feminist conception of the first house. But when we think that etymologically the word architect and architecture comes from text, T-E-K-S, which means to weave, maybe Gottfried Semper is right. Now, this subject interested me and I reflected on it, and I found out that all the gods and goddesses of weaving were actually women. So they were goddesses, not gods. Ishtar in Mesopotamia, a goddess of love, even of war, and of weaving. Lilith in for us, for Christianity, the woman prior to Eva or to Eve, because apparently there was a wild woman before Eve, a woman who refused to be domesticated like Eve and made responsible for picking up the apple from the tree, and all the disasters came. Of course, we always blame the woman, right? Plus the idea of the woman being born from the bone of Adam, a very almost unacceptable conception. Why should a woman be born from the bone of Adam? Why not have Adam be born from the bone of woman? But anyway, it appears that in mythology there is Lilith, the woman prior to Eve, the wild woman. And here we see Eve in this fresco by Michelangelo is Adam, Eve, and then apparently here is Lilith. She gives the apple to Eve because she's too submissive. She's, the slave of masculine or male theology. But Lilith was also a weaver herself. Then in Egyptian mythology, Neith, I don't know if I pronounce well her name, she was also the goddess of weaving. Arachne is beautiful because Arachne was a mortal woman, and Athena, the goddess, challenged her to a competition who weaves better. And the competition apparently was won by Arachne, the mortal, and then the angry Athena cursed her and transformed her into a spider. And here she is in an engraving by Gustave Doré. You have Dante, going into the underworld, and here is Arachne, cursed by Athena, transformed into a spider, and she weaves and weaves and weaves because this is what spiders do. But the story is very interesting because Arachne actually depicted Zeus as an immoral male who was cheating and so on, and Athena, who sprang from the head of Zeus, defended her creator. It's also very interesting that Athena is in a way symmetrically situated vis-a-vis Jesus. Jesus didn't have a biological father, had a extraterrestrial father, so to speak, God himself, and Athena didn't have a mother. She was born directly from the head of Zeus. This is very, very interesting. So Athena didn't have a mother. Jesus didn't have a father. I'm talking about a biological father. I'm not an expert in these matters, but they stirred up my imagination and my curiosity. And Frigg, the goddess of weaving for the Scandinavians. So all goddesses are of weaving are just that, goddesses, and this one is for the Hindu, Durga, also a woman, a lady. So that's why I said that architecture, with its second part of the word texture, is a feminine enterprise. Ultimately, it comes from weaving, and since all goddesses were women, Well, I'll let you reflect on this. And here we see the Queen Elizabeth of Romania in 1843, 1916. Herself was very fond of, I don't know if she was weaving herself, but in this picture it's obvious that she was very interested in what appears to be connected with weaving. But back to Benedetta Tagliabue, sorry about this intermezzo, but it's a fascinating subject, I think, the subject of weaving and architecture. And in a certain way, this is what Benedetta Tagliabue wanted to do with this pavilion for Spain. And I think she did a great job. And I'm not sure that people still understand the implications of this building. This is weaving. This is she actually repeated what the primordial man did then around the fire that Gottfried Semper described. The interior, it is as it is, but this fact that she needed weaving to be present in the making of the building shows a disposition towards non-conformism, which is connected with the very beginnings of architecture. Benedetta Tagliabue, from the office Miraes Tagliabue. Now, yes, behind the panels, the mobile panels, the woven panels, there is this steel structure. This might be a problem, I confess, I recognize, but still here there are layers of meaning that should be addressed. The Spanish pavilion in Shanghai, I think 2008, if I'm not mistaken, or 2012, but it might be 2008. It's the art of basketry. You know, this is a rendering of the project before it was built. Now, by the way of this, I would like to show you a project that an architect from New York, she's now in New York, but and she was actually born in the United States, but she was Egyptian. She is Egyptian. She's still young, Shakira Hamad, and I knew her personally, and we collaborated for about 10 years when she volunteered to help me with a website. She was in Alexandria, and I was in Romania. Anyway, I want to show you a project that she did, which is about weaving studies that she did in Maya. I know that the students here in Bucharest study Maya, but I didn't yet meet a student who would be able to do something like this. You see here weaving as well. Literally, it's about weaving. And the meticulousness of this work is amazing. You know, because it's very rigorous and at the same time very free and very knot-like and complex. You could say this is not yet architecture. I'm going to show you a project, but the idea to weave in this way, I think, is very courageous, actually heroic, and even at the level of graphics. Because of the complexity of the work. Again, this was done with Maya. She had a postgraduate training in Vienna, where they worked 1 semester and a half only in Maya, and the other 1 semester and a half, they created the diploma, the thesis. Imagine doing something like this. Again, it's about an imagined possible architecture that is woven. This is an image of the office of Benedetta Tagliabue in Barcelona. Here she is with the books. She lives there. It must be very pleasant to work there. She was also Benedetta Tagliabue. I don't know if she still is a member of the jury of that offered the Pritzker Prize for a number of years. Other images of her work. We are going to see more in detail some of his works. So here is a dialogue with Benedetta Tagliabue. Question: in looking at your design values, who or what has been the biggest influence on your work as an architect? And she said, well, of course, I always say that the biggest influence is my husband, Enric Miralles. He was a person looking everywhere. I think I have the same attitude of being very curious, curious about the works of others, but also curious about what artists do or what other types of professions do and what can be discovered through films. I think this is maybe the type of influence we can imagine in our own work more broadly. Here she is with Enric Miralles as a young woman and him still a young man. The Scottish Parliament building in Edinburgh in United Kingdom from 2004. Enric Miralles died, but she continued the work. But they won the competition, and it is the most unusual building. Look at this. Who would think that this is a governmental building at the highest level of political, activity? It is fragmented. Look at these bow windows or alcoves from the inside. They are unimaginable in general, for any kind of building. But for a governmental building, they would be, almost inconceivable. They were built. And you are going to see pictures also from the inside. Here is a construction worker in the very unusual shape of the window of the Parliament building in Edinburgh. And now a view from the inside, where the governmental official sits here, maybe with documents and files here, folders, and studies them near this unusually shaped window. It's an architecture that in most situations would be inconceivable, but they built it again. This shows, that the level of motivation, if it's very high, and if you truly believe in what you are doing, you can do, exceptional things, or very, very different things. Look at the gathering place, the big, room for, the most important decisions to be taken at the political level. And I think it is an admirable space. And truly, Benedetta Tagliabue, since her husband died, she had to carry on this very complex, demanding project until finalized, and she succeeded. Bravo to her. I mean, it was a formidable effort, and she succeeded. Look at this architecture: a governmental building, a parliament building. It was meant to be a building which doesn't crush, doesn't dwarf the people, but with many fragmentations to make it more conducive to people who enter the building to handle all kinds of matters. So it's not an intimidating building, it's rather an inspiring building with levels of an organic architectonic culture that are almost impossible to contemplate in the case of such a building. Here you see again other images of this building. Miralles, Tagliabue, and from above. And here is the prime minister, well, the queen, the former queen of England, and I guess the prime minister of Scotland uh, visiting the building. I wonder what they thought. It was built. And it was built because the architects were taking risks, were courageous. They were not afraid to betray the artistry. And I think this is something we should learn. And these are all unique, all similar in character and yet unique. Each window, each bow window, and each alcove, they are all a little bit different. Very unusual architecture. Now, the campus of Fudan School of Management, Shanghai, China, in progress. I don't think, as far as I know, I didn't see pictures of it being built. A tower also in China in progress. I didn't see pictures of this one either as being built. But this one, a social housing block in Madrid, this was built in 2013. It's not so interesting, perhaps, but it was built. We move forward, then the Diagonal Mar Park in Barcelona from 2003. Here we see ceramic work, and I truly think there is high time to bring back ceramics to architecture. In this case, even more so since it's the city of Antoni Gaudí, who also employed lots of ceramics in Park Güell and in other works. So it's some kind of an homage to him by employing the ceramics in this very different park otherwise compared to Antoni Gaudí's Park Güell. Santa Caterina Market, it's a market in Barcelona, and here it is during the construction. And here it is the project seen from above, the roof of the building, and another rendering of the roof of the building. Art is present, color is present, even figuration is present. You know, some approximation of fruits perhaps on the roof. And look at the plan. You would say it's mad, it's maddening. Well, so is life sometimes. And the negotiations with the people who sell fruits and vegetables and cold cuts and whatever. I like the plan. It's alive. It's visceral. It's interesting. It's engaging. And you see the building built. Of course, the timid one would ask, why does it have to be that this way? But the one who is not timid would answer, why not? And you'll see, because the dynamics of negotiation within a market are somehow conducive for that kind of tormented, plan. Maybe partially tormented, maybe not so much tormented, but we see it's almost like the cathedral of food. It's not the only one, of course. There are other cathedrals of food. Sorry for the question about religiosity of my language. MVRDV also did a market in Rotterdam that could be called, to an extent, the cathedral of vegetables or the cathedral of fruits. So this is the building that built by Benedetta Tagliabue, but maybe the project was initiated by both Eric Miralles and her. And some views from the inside. I truly believe architecture is beautiful if it is an adventure. And if it is not an adventure, it could become very dry and tiring. Now, you might not agree with this kind of architecture, but you cannot contest its originality. And it was dealing also with an existing building there, as you can see. Eric Miralles was not really a deconstructivist, nor is Benedetta Tagliabue, but the fragmentation first Eric Miralles brought to architecture could be somehow approximated as being deconstructivist. Although I see here more effort towards some kind of a synthesis to bring the fragments together. Gas Natural Office building in Barcelona, a more commercial structure that is corporate structure. And I'm not particularly impressed by it, but this part of the building impresses me because I think this shows the rebelliousness of the architects. Otherwise, the building, a big cantilever part, all glass and so on, we have seen such things. It is this part which intrigues me. I don't know what is happening inside, what kind of functions, but I would say that this is an expression of rebelliousness, because I don't believe Eric Miralles and Benedetta Tagliabue appreciate a lot the corporate culture. I don't think so. But it's the irrationality of this object which, through its reflections and its distortions, creates some kind of an opposition to the corporate culture and to capitalism itself somehow, indirectly. And look at the plan of the building. It was built like this. So who says that clients are, not accepting extravagant architectural gestures are not always correct. There are some that do accept and even embrace, perhaps. How else to explain, the building of this part here? For my taste, too much glass. But this was the time and this was the company. Gas is expensive. The gas companies are doing well. So let's give them glass. Clichy Montfermeil metro station in France. This was a competition they won. Her office, and actually part of this project was given to a Romanian architect who studied in Bucharest, Elena Nedelcu. She became a partner in this firm. And I know she worked on this competition. They won it. This is the plan of what they proposed in Paris. I don't know the significance of that particular phase that was employed in the conceptualization of the building, but interesting way even of exploring the architecture, the visualizing it. Also references to ethnicity, because this was in an area of Paris where people of other ethnicities lived, and they wanted to honor this diversity, ethnic diversity, and I believe that this was the correct way to do, the correct way to act. They won the competition, they are building it. Maybe it's already built. I prepared this presentation 2 or 3 years ago. It's a very big subway station, and they were building another one in Napoli, equally big. a complex program and a complex undertaking. Again, this is in France, in Paris or the suburbs of Paris. Ornamentation is present, some form of weaving. You cannot have just structure. You also have to have some ornamentation, and maybe an ornament that becomes structure or a structure that becomes ornament. In the process of building up the project, all kinds of procedures were considered, understood that's how they work, with a lot of collages and bringing together towards some kind of a synthesis, many elements. International Horticulture Exhibition in Xi'an 2011. I think we need more and more horticulture that is nature, that is plants. And this is what they did, or what she did, Benedetta Tagliabue. This is a fragile architecture, but it is a positive thing that it is fragile, because you are not going to build for horticulture in concrete or I don't know what. This is about the life of the plants, not the life of the humans who need to glorify themselves beyond all measure. The rector of his Vigo University campus, a different kind of work. This is not for the plants, it's for the leaders of a school. Anyway, but here we see again complexity and even contradiction. If we are to refer to the title of a book by Robert Venturi, although the architecture has nothing to do with Robert Venturi. But we see the value of ornament and variation in the facade and the materiality of the facade, which matters. Extension of youth music school. Here is an auditorium that bears the name of Miralles. As you can see, I think this is in Germany or the Netherlands. Miralles Saal. Miralles, I guess it's an auditorium there. It's a music school that was built. Maybe they won the competition together with her husband. I don't know. Love it. Pavilion for Expo Milano 2015. Here it is. It is structure that became ornament. And I think the dialectics between structure and ornament are very important. So if you can make the ornament become structure and the structure become ornament, you have a chance to create a building that is both sound, but also pleasing, architecturally speaking, aesthetically speaking. Here we see the building by Daniel Lipskind for the same expo. For China, he built it, a dragon-like building, kind of, with the exception of the top, which is flat. And these were built by Benedetta Tagliabue. A view from the interior. A complex structure, suppose. because our life is complex. We cannot go any longer with the simplicity of, you know what, you know, that those rectangular Cartesian structures, which are, uh, you know, after a while became tiring because they keep repeating themselves. And they do not welcome the labyrinth of life. Naples Underground Central Station, so I said that they are also building a big subway station in Naples, in Napoli. Here is an image talking about cathedrals. Well, this is not the cathedral of fruits and vegetables, but the cathedral of, you know, high-speed, you know, trains or high-speed subways in Napoli. I don't know if they advanced with this work. They won the competition, and this is the model for it. And this is a tower in China that was not built, as far as I know. Or not yet. Too much glass for my taste. Another tower in Taiwan, costly as it is, and inspirations in the creation of the tower, uh, not immediately transparent to the thought why exactly these things turn into that tower. I'm sure there is an explanation, but I didn't quite understand from that page. This one was at one point in construction, as you can see, but I never saw it finalized. This is a very interesting museum built in China for apparently a famous painter, the Picasso of China. And I don't have images, last images of the finalized building, but you'll see some structures being built. This is the plan, it's like you know, a so-called primitive little village with pavilions, and it's, you know, quite dramatic. These constructive elements are actually made of steel plate. So it is clear Benedetta Tagliabue takes risks. She's creative. She doesn't allow to just repeat works, you know, from a comfortable position. No, she reinvents herself and the work of her office with each new project. And she welcomes materiality and viscerality and complexity. And I think this is a good thing. And of course, weaving. The project, the rendering of the project. It's a more unusual project for a museum because usually museums have white walls inside at least, and you know, rather flat surfaces. Here we see something else. Now I end this presentation about her work, and in the meantime she built other works. In the invitation to the presentation, the second one, I included an image of a church. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to include it in the presentation, but I will end this presentation on the works of Benedetta Tagliabue with this stage design for the Merce Cunningham Ballet Company. And it moves me to see that an architect who also teaches, who runs a big office, who has many commissions, also finds time to create stage design. And here is Merce Cunningham, a remarkable choreographer at 90 something, His partner was a great avant-garde musician, John Cage, or composer. And he commissioned Benedetta Tagliabue to create the stage design for this dance. And I don't know if I am now inspired enough and if I have the energy to evoke how much it moves me, the meeting between two brilliant people in the name of art, serving art together, and not just the two of them, but also the people around, the dancers. They applaud. They applaud the musician, the composer, the choreographer. They applaud the architect. They applaud in in essence, art and brilliance. This is the stage design of Benedetta Tagliabue. And what can we say? It's about a celebration of life. It's a celebration of the flowering of creativity, of human creativity. And what else can keep us alive, if not that? And here they are, the dancers. And I love them because there is vitality, there is discipline, there is inspiration, there is nerve, there is verve, there is this dynamism which makes human beings earn their lives, because we are talking about that, earning one's life. The architect earned her life by conceiving the stage design. Merce Cunningham earned his life by being a brilliant choreographer and dancer. And these dancers do the same thing. And let's hope they inspire us to be equally inspired and inspiring. Because again and again, what would life be without art? And what would life be without brilliance in art? And without creativity, we cannot achieve this brilliance. Look at them. I think they are beautiful. Thank you.